Hey guys, it's John with ReelBlue Custom Rods, and welcome back to part 2 of the guide spacing chart. On the previous video, I discussed spinning rod setup for primarily freshwater or salmon and steelhead fishing. But today, I'm going to go ahead and focus on guide spacing for a conventional setup. Or a casting setup. So we're going to really focus on casting or conventional setups for freshwater applications, heavy saltwater applications, light saltwater applications, and then salmon and steelhead. So let's go ahead and get started with these guide spacing charts. So for the freshwater, we're going to talk about 5.5 foot to 7 foot rods. So for the 5.5 foot rod, your guide spacing would be 4.5 inches, 9.5, 15.5, 22.5, 30, and 39 inches. And your recommended guide size would be 6, 6, 6, 8, 8, and a 10. For a 6 foot rod, your guide spacing would be a 4.5, a 9.5, 15.5, 22.5, 31.5, and 42.5, with the exact same guide sizes of a 6, 6, 6, 8, 8, and a 10. For a 6 foot, 2 inch freshwater casting setup, you would go with 4.5 inches, 9.5 inches, 15.5, 22.5, 31.5, and 42.5. And again, with the 3 size 6s, the 2 size 8, and the size 10 ring. For a 6 foot, 6 inch casting setup, your guide spacing would be 4 inches, 8.5 inches, 13.5 inches, 19.5 inches, 26.5 inches, 34 and 5/8, and 44.5. And now we're going to jump up on some guide sizes. And so we're going to go with a 6, 6, 6, 6, an 8, a 10, and a 12. And for the last freshwater casting setup, we're going to go with a 7 foot rod at 5 inches, 10.5 inches, 16.5 inches, 23 inches, 31 inches, 40 inches, and 50 inches, with the same guide or recommended guide sizes of 6, 6, 6, 6, 8, 10, and 12. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to the heavy saltwater. And for the heavy saltwater conventional setup, we're going to really just talk about 4 sizes: a 6 foot, the 6 foot 6 inch, a 7 foot, and then a 7 foot 6 inch rod. And so for the first one, for a 6 foot rod, heavy saltwater conventional or casting setup, your guide spacing could be 5 inches, 10.5 inches, 16.5 inches, 24 inches, and 34.5 inches, with a recommended guide size of 8, 10, 12, 16, and 20. For a 6 foot, 6 inch heavy saltwater application casting setup, your guide size would be 5 inches, 10.5 inches, 16.5 inches, 24 inches, 32.5 inches, and 42 inches, with a recommended guide size of 8, 8, 8, 10, 12, and 16. The 7 foot heavy saltwater conventional setup would be 4.5 inches, 9.5, 15, 21, 28.5, 37.5, 48 inches, with 8, 8, 8, 10, 10, 12, and 16 for your recommended guide sizes. And then lastly, the 7-foot 6-inch for heavy saltwater casting setup. Your guide spacing would be 4.5 inches, 9 inches, 14, 19.5, 25.5, 32.5, 41, and 51 inches with a recommended guide size of 8, 8, 8, 10, 10, 10, 12, and 16. And again, so for, heavy saltwater applications, when we're looking at these guide sizes, again, these are just, recommended guide sizes. You can change them out. And here's an example. So the 6-foot 6-inch, guide sizes of 8, 8, 8, 10, 12, and 16. There's times that I like to use a 20, a 16, a 12, a 10, and then 2 more 10s, right? So instead of using 3 8s, a 10, a 12, and a 16, I like to go 3 10s, a 12, a 16, and a 20. And so you can make that change as you want, right? So it's not a hard and fast, you have to be that size of guide that I'm throwing up here. Again, these are just recommended, and you can kind of plug and play based on, the power and the action of the rod, right? And the line weight. So things to think about. And then let's go ahead and talk about light saltwater casting or conventional application. So we're going to talk about 3 sizes of rod right here. So we're going to talk about a 7-foot, a 7.5, and then an 8-foot rod. So for the 7-foot lightweight casting setup, your guide spacing could be 5, 11, 17, 24, 31.5, 40, and 49.5 inches with a recommended guide size of 6, 6, 6, 6, 8, 10, and 12. A 7-foot 6-inch light saltwater conventional setup, guide spacing would be 5 inches, 10 inches, 15.5 inches, 21.5 inches, 28 inches, 35.5 inches, 44 inches, and 55 inches with guide sizes of 8, 8, 8, 8, 10, 10, 10, and a size 12 guide size, or ring size, if you will. And then lastly, the last setup right here would be an 8-foot light saltwater casting setup of 4.5 inches, 9.5 inches, 15, 21, 28, 36, 45.5, and 57 inches with a recommended guide sizes of 8, 8, 8, 8, 10, 10, 10, and a size 12. And then the last rods that we're going to go ahead and talk about for a conventional setup are going to be salmon and steelhead. And for the salmon and steelhead, we're going to talk about 8-foot, 8.5 foot, and then a 10.5 foot setup. So for a conventional salmon steel rod guide spacing setup, we're looking at 4.5 inches, 9.5, 15, 21, 28, 36, 45.5, and 57 inches with guide sizes of 8, 8, 8, 8, 10, 10, 12, and 16. An 8-foot 6-inch salmon steelhead conventional or casting setup would have a guide spacing of 4.5, 9.5, 15.5, 22.5, 30.5, 39.5, 50, and 63 inches with the same exact guide sizes of the 8-foot rod of 8, 8, 8, 8, 10, 10, 12, and 16. And lastly, a 10.5-inch salmon steelhead casting setup rod would have a guide spacing of about 4.5 inches, 10 inches, 16.5, 24, 32, 41, 50.5, 61, 71.5, and 83 inches with guide sizes of 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 8, 10, 12, and 16. So again, just to recap, we talked about, guide spacing for casting or conventional setups for freshwater, heavy saltwater, light saltwater, and salmon and steelhead. So again, if you have any questions about these setups, go ahead and leave a note down in the comment block. And if you found this information useful and you want to see more stuff like this, go ahead and hit the like button and feel free to share this information with somebody you think that might find it useful. So again, appreciate you guys supporting ReelBlue Custom Rods. Thanks for watching. Make sure you watch this next video here. And until next time, take care. Bye.